Dumela Batoko Haye and welcome to Mommy Diaries. Let's say by this show we talk about all things motherhood, parenting, and raising our beautiful babies. On today's show, we talk about my favorite topic, breastfeeding. And Dr. K, we're going to talk about the importance and the benefits of breastfeeding. Doctor, welcome to Mommy Diaries.
Thank you so much.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Who is Dr. K? What does K stand for?
Okay. So, Kina Kutso, Dr. Kutso Sibetseba. I'm a pediatrician, and that's why I'm here. Particularly fond of small people, particularly fond of breastfeeding.
Yes.
But I'm also a mom to 4 gorgeous boys.
Where did those babies come from?
myself.
With that body.
Thank you. Who I breastfed myself.
Yeah.
So it's a topic that's particularly close to my heart. So I'm very excited.
Now let's go right into it. What are the benefits of breastfeeding? Like, why should we breastfeed?
Okay, so I mean, we could go on for days.
Yeah.
But we know that breastfeeding is the best thing for mom and baby. For the baby itself, I mean, it's the perfect cocktail of everything that your baby needs for optimum growth and optimum development. You know, we'll talk a little bit later about the immune system benefits, but in terms of availability, in terms of being warm all the time, you know, with load shedding. So if we just think about the convenience factor, right? And then we think about bonding and how it's been shown to increase attachment in mothers and babies, to decrease postpartum depression, long-term ovarian cancer, breast cancer. That's just for the mom. Contracting the uterus. So immediately from the time you've delivered, the postpartum bleeding after delivery is so much less because that uterus is contracting and we're going back into place. We are in the generation of yummy mummies, so everybody wants to be snatched straight after. So we know the more the contraction of the uterus happens, the quicker the uterus contracts, the quicker our 6-packs come back. So there's another benefit. I mean, for the baby itself, sure. So the type of protein that's in breast milk is one that's easily digestible. The fat that's in breast milk goes straight to the brain and is optimum development for the brain. The immune benefits of breast milk. So yeah, we could go on for days about the benefits, but we know it's the perfect thing for baby and mom.
So let's just break it down for the benefits for the child, and then we'll go straight into the benefits for the mom. You spoke about, you touched on, you know, the uterus and all of that, but you would hear some women saying that no, but when they breastfeed, they actually gain weight. But you would hear, like what you just said now, I remember when I breastfed, I went back to my body. I didn't go to gym. I just went back to my body because I breastfed for long. So let's talk about the benefits for the baby.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, just in terms of what breast milk is, right? So it's food for the baby. So we think the sugar that's in there is called what we call human milk oligosaccharides. And that's basically sugar for good bacteria to grow, right? That means from a development of the gut point of view, your baby's gut is developing optimally from the very beginning. And that has features, long-term features like constipation. We often hear constipation being a bit of a challenge in feeding a baby. Allergies later on, asthma, diabetes later on, and that all boils down to those little sugars that are in the breast milk. Like we said, the protein is easily digestible, so it's bioavailable. So what bioavailable means is that it's quickly available for your baby to use, so you don't need big amounts of it. And then the fat, again, brain development, eye development, the immune properties. So we have what we call immunoglobulins in breast milk, and that's one of the things that with time and science and everything, they haven't been able to replicate in breast milk alternatives like formula. You know? So, and there's one important one called IgA, immunoglobulin A, and that one is transferred in high amounts in the breast milk and across the placenta in the pregnancy. And that is actually the most important immunoglobulin for the respiratory tract, for the gastrointestinal tract of babies. So that's how breast milk actually prevents babies from getting infection, protects them from infection, and is so important for the development of the immune system of the baby.
And what are the benefits that you would get from breast milk that you will never get from formula?
Oh, there's so many.
A lot, right?
There's so many. So immunoglobulin A, so all the immune properties, like we said, the oligosaccharides, so those sugars. Again, formulas are doing better in trying to replicate, but you're never going to get it at that level.
As natural as
Absolutely, as available. There's things like lactoferrin and lysozymes and hormones. The more we read up about breast milk, the more research is being done into breast milk, the more you realize
there are no disadvantages.
What a wonder it is. It is absolutely incredible. And more we realize that not just in the short term, but in the long term as well, the benefits of breastfeeding extend far into your baby's life.
And now there's also lots of myths around breastfeeding. Like I said, now some moms would say, well, now when they breastfeed, they don't lose weight, they gain weight. Or you would hear things like, oh no, I'm going back to work, so I don't want to breastfeed anymore. Now let's talk about the pumping, because we live in a different generation where after giving birth we have to go back to work. Back in the days that they used to pump with their hands. But now there's different types of pumps and stuff. So is that fine? Can we pump and keep the breast milk in the fridge like how we normally do it? Is it safe?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll tell you a bit about my story. So I had quadruplet boys. I had 4 little boys at 28 weeks. So they were really small, and there were many of them.
Yes.
So it was all the challenges in one. So when you have a baby at term, right? When you have your baby on time and you're in the hospital and your baby is there with you, your baby has that constant stimulation for your breast, so you're feeding your baby all the time, and so your body knows what to do. It knows, okay, there's a human, I need to make the milk, right? So supply, even though there are some challenges which we might go into a little bit later, it's a little bit more of a natural process for your brain to adapt to, okay, I've delivered and now the baby's here. So with me at delivery, my babies were taken away. I wasn't well myself. So that those early days were quite difficult from a breastfeeding point of view. And all I could do was pump, because my boys were 28 weeks, so they were not in any position to suck. They were all in the ICU. So nobody was sucking and providing that salivary stimulation for my breasts. So I started pumping probably about a week in, because I was a bit unwell and in ICU myself. So I started pumping about a week into the delivery. I didn't hand pump that time. We'll talk about hand pumping because wow,
it's a lot of work.
But I pumped almost immediately. I started pumping, and I was told quite early that I did a lot of research into what it meant, because I wanted to give my babies breast milk. And I found that I learned to pump quite early, and I had to stimulate what it would mean if my babies were with me. So I was pumping every 2 to 3 hours. I was pumping both sides. I was lucky enough to get a hospital grade pump. Because really, milk supply really does boil down to supply and demand, right? Obviously, there's a lot of other things that contribute to how much milk you're going to make, and there are some ways we can try and make it better. But it all boils down to telling your brain, the baby is here, being relaxed enough that oxytocin hormone can be increased, release the prolactin, and that's what's going to stimulate your milk supply. It's a little bit difficult to replicate with a breast pump, because it doesn't have big brown beady eyes that are looking at you and tickling you while they feed. But it does, it can be done, it can. I remember I used to look at pictures of my babies while I pumped, and I think in some way that maybe stimulated my brain to think, okay, there's people that we need to be making this milk for. So I pumped. It was hard. It was every 2 to 3 hours, and I was able to give my babies breast milk for 14 months. And once they came out the hospital and they were big and stronger, then I was able to breastfeed.
But what advice would you give, since you're talking about your personal story, the advice you would give to moms who are under stress? Because you would hear a lot of people saying that, I stopped breastfeeding because I was not okay. It can be stress about giving birth to a premature baby, or the stress about some people really go through a lot as women. Some women, after giving birth, they're single moms, that nothing is going right. And you would find that those are some of the reasons that women would say, I've stopped breastfeeding because I'm stressed. I can't produce enough milk. Does stress affect the the amount of milk one can produce.
Absolutely, 100%. Like we mentioned, remember oxytocin is that relaxation hormone.
Yeah.
It's like the happy, I'm calm hormone. Yeah. And you need that oxytocin to stimulate the prolactin to then release the milk. So stress will 100% play a role. And I think it's difficult. I think the whole process of breastfeeding has been made to be this like, oh, why can't you breastfeed? Oh, it's so natural, it's so easy, it's so simple. And then you try and do it, and it's not always the case. Like you've mentioned, there's personal stresses that happen peri-pregnancy, peri-delivery. There's also the stresses of breastfeeding itself and pressure that's been put on you by family members or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I think for me, it's always a matter of seeking support and seeking help. Yeah. And I think about breastfeeding as kind of a long-term commitment. I mean, even if you breastfeed for 4 months, it's 4 months of your life where you're feeding a couple of times a day. So I always think prepare yourself as you would for any other long-term commitment. Read as much as you can, get as much help as you can from the right places.
Yes.
Stay away from negative influences. So if you can read, do the research around it, get a lactation consultant, try and minimize your stress as much as possible. It is difficult, because we don't always have the means to minimize certain stresses. But if you can minimize your stress and put in the work, that's the other thing. It's like we don't realize that feeding your baby is work, right?
It is work.
There's a lot of changes that are happening to your body. Some people have had cesarean sections and are recovering from major surgery. No one tells you that it's major surgery. I mean, they
cut you.
They do. Yes. They cut through so many layers. Yes. They cut through your uterus and then take a baby out and sew it all back together again. No other surgical procedure expects you to be up and walking around the next day. But post-cesarean, you're worried about feeding your baby and all of that. So I think be kind to yourself. Seek support. When you have the support, most people are fortunate enough to have the support of partners. But if you don't have partners, you have family. So seek support. Give yourself as much knowledge as you can. Read up around it. Lactation consultants are usually available at hospitals. Eat well.
I was about to say diet.
Stay hydrated 100%. And I mean, there's so many things. There's jungle juice and there's all sorts of things. There's nursing teas and there's fennel tea and there's all sorts of herbs and concoctions that are available out there. And basically how a lot of these things work is by artificially stimulating that oxytocin. So like that's why people will say eat comfort food. Eat the food that makes you think of home and comfort and warmth and eat those things because those are the things that are going to stimulate your brain to think oxytocin, I'm happy, I'm relaxed, prolactin, and that's how you're going to make the breast milk. And feed often.
Every time I have a like what you're saying now, like the cesarean, like women are so powerful.
Amen.
And like you're saying, like imagine you just had a cesarean and you not just a cesarean, a baby was taken out of you, and you are expected to walk around and make things happen.
That's it.
We are powerful. And I think sometimes we forget.
We do.
But every time I'm having these conversations with Mom, I'm like, oh my God.
You're reminded, right?
You're reminded.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now the moms who are struggling, they really want to breastfeed, but they're not winning. Like some people would say, you don't have enough milk, and us with small boobs, we had enough milk. Is it true?
So not really.
Okay.
Not really. So, I mean, I've found that as long as, because again, it's one of those things where it's a long-term commitment. So sometimes it's going to be simple and you put the baby on and the baby is going to latch. Yeah. Sometimes you have to find a different position because there are women that have larger breasts, there are women that have smaller breasts, So it really is about experimenting with position, trying different ways to latch, not introducing a bottle early because that then introduces other challenges like nipple confusion, So I think it's one of those where we have to commit ourselves to the work that comes with breastfeeding. And it's something that people don't talk about enough, that it's actually, it's work.
Work,
you have to learn, you have to drink well, eat well. You still need to be nursing your womb. You still need to be practicing hygiene. Your nipples still need to be clean so that you are able to give your baby as clean a milk as possible. So I think a lot of the time, there just isn't support and we're kind of expected to just go into it like it's this natural thing. But I think what we need to be doing is empowering ourselves with the knowledge, with positioning, trying different positions, trying different strategies, and just kind of seeing and not following what people have said before you. I mean, for a long time, I used to believe routine. And for me personally, I had 4 little people, so I needed a routine. Otherwise
it's going to be a mess.
But some babies just, in the beginning especially, you have to demand feed, and it's the only way your body's going to know, human being is here, let me feed, let me make the milk, so it's also just not following what you've been told before, not being told that certain foods you can't have, certain foods because it's going to be bad for your baby, or it's going to make your baby gassy. We have to remember that it's a very individualized process, and it really is a very steep learning curve, both for your baby and for you. And as natural and as beautiful as it is, it can be quite difficult, and we really do need to put the work in ourselves.
And when the little ones now, you would some babies, they don't get as full as others. Now, when is the right time then to say, okay, the breast milk is not enough, then maybe now I must start introducing formula. So when is the right time? Is it true that some babies don't get full, they need formula?
So it's a difficult thing, and I'll tell you a story. A good friend of mine is a lactation consultant. So imagine you're a lactation consultant, you know everything there is to know about lactating and breast milk. She has a son. First child, she's able to breastfeed and everything's fine. Second baby, she tries everything. Eventually her child gets admitted with dehydration. Can you imagine the amount of stress that puts on with the knowledge? So it's like all the knowledge in the world, you know. So it's not that, she didn't drink the tea. It's
she
not
did
like
everything.
She didn't have the knowledge, you know what I mean? So, and situations like that really stick with me, because they teach me that as much as we can say, breastfeed, it's not always 100% possible for everybody. And if you can, you're absolutely blessed and it's the best thing. But if you can't, you're still a good mom, and we need to speak about breast milk being wonderful, but we also need to also say that fed is best. A fed baby is a healthy baby, right? Baby. So generally what I'd say is feed 20 to 30 minutes, feed your baby. And if it seems they aren't settling, some babies really do need top-ups with formula, particularly in the beginning. Most breasts are going to adapt to how much milk your baby needs, but sometimes there are situations where we can't give only breast milk. Mums go back to work sooner. I have patients that go back to work as soon as 3 weeks after delivery. So I mean, we are in a situation where women are economically very impactful. And actually need to work. So breastfeeding alternatives like formula are excellent, and there's so much research that's done into breast milk, and there's so much research that's been done into formula and making formula best and healthy for your baby. So formula's good. I mean, it's not as dynamic, it's not as adaptable, it's not going to change with your baby's age. It's not as convenient with load shedding and everything. But it's available and it's good. And fed is best. And if breastfeeding comes at the expense of your mental health and stress on your baby, then we 100% absolutely have to advocate for feeding other formulas and breast milk alternatives.
And then water, like most of the time you would hear breast milk has also, I don't know if it's true, a lot of water. Yes. So when is the right time to introduce water? So let's say you've just given birth, you're breastfeeding. When is the right time to introduce water?
Okay, so for the most part, like you said, that fore milk, so that milk that comes at the beginning of the feed, you'll see it looks like skim milk.
Skim milk, yeah.
That's like up to 90% water. It's predominantly water and immunoglobulin, so water and immune properties, stuff for the immune system. That milk that comes afterwards, towards the end of the feed, middle to the end of the feed, the hind milk, that's the rich, thick, creamy milk, right? So for the most part, if your baby is having breast milk, you're giving your baby a lot of water. And we generally are quite careful about introducing water then, because remember, their tummy is the size of their fist. So it's very, very small. So you can just imagine, if I'm giving a little bit of breast milk and then water, we're actually compromising on calories, right?
Got you.
So in the beginning, we say, actually up to the point where we're introducing feeds, which is sometimes 6 months, sometimes around 4 months, where we're introducing feeds, we're actually saying that your baby doesn't need water until then. Formula-fed babies sometimes need water around 3-4 months, a little bit earlier. But generally with breastfed babies, we say when you start solids, then you start water.
But also the tricky part with us is obviously there's you, the doctor, there's your mom who has her own theory, and we trust our mothers. Absolutely. And then you would hear like, who do you listen to? Because sometimes your mom would be like, no. Like, no, my midwife said, because I remember me as well, and I didn't give Nema water until she was 6 months.
Yes.
Because I breastfed for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So, like 6 months, and then, no, and I'm like, no, the midwife said. So sometimes as women, we don't know. There's Google.
Yes.
There's the doctor.
Yes. There's TikTok.
There's TikTok.
Yes.
TikTok. There's mom. There's TikTok.
Yes.
There's your mother-in-law.
Yes.
There's a doctor.
Yes.
Who should we listen to? Obviously, it's the doctor, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like you trust your mom with her.
Easier said than done.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's not easy.
So I always say to my patients that it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
And it really does take a village.
Yeah.
And your village is comprised of the people that love you most and the people that love your baby.
Yeah.
So the first thing you have to remind yourself constantly, especially in this age where we're confronted with information from all sorts of sources, is that these people love you and they love your baby. And nobody is trying to hurt your baby. You know, and I think the moment you remember that, you tend to not take things so personal, even when it sounds like the advice is wrong and it's going against everything I read on TikTok and Instagram and on Google and what my pediatrician said. So I often say that you also don't want to alienate the community around you because you're rejecting every single piece of advice, you know. So once you've internalized that they're not trying to hurt my baby, they love us and they actually want what's best for us, and maybe these things did work for me. Maybe these drops and concoctions did work for me when I was a baby, you know. So I always say, like, I think educate yourself, know what the facts are, but hear them out as well. And as long as something is not obviously detrimental to your baby, then it should be okay. I mean, like 1 teaspoon of water is not going to be as harmful as a cup of water.
Absolutely.
So sometimes if they say a teaspoon of water, just say okay and give a teaspoon of water, and just feed the rest of the time. So it's about choosing your struggles ultimately, because again, you don't want to alienate your community because you're saying no
to everything. Now breastfeeding in public, we hear lots of stories. Why is that woman breastfeeding in public? What's your take on breastfeeding in public? I mean, when the child is hungry, they're hungry.
They're hungry, yes.
So should we buy those things that we buy to cover so that people don't see your boobs? Or do you advocate for like, hey, ntale tswele ngwana?
So I mean, I think there's a lot of problems, around that topic. And I think number one is that it's not spoken about enough and it's not publicized enough. So in response to, I think, the sexualization of women's bodies, we've forgotten that breasts are primarily an organ for feeding our children, And now it's kind of seen like, why are you showing nudity? But it's not nudity, it's me feeding my baby, know. And I mean, I suppose breasts are a secondary sexual organ. So I think that, for my benefit, for my safety, the safety of my baby, and I guess the people around me, there are lots of like cover-ups and things like that are available. But I think that societally, this is something that needs to be dealt with. There's a lot of like cultural prejudices to breastfeeding women, which is very strange, because if you whip out a bottle of a breast milk alternative or expressed breast milk, no one's judging you the same way, but the direct source is seen as this like very hectic, very sexual thing, you know. So I mean, I think culturally there's a problem, societally there's a problem, I think it starts with publicly advocating for it. I think it starts with people like you, people like me, for example, breastfeeding in public and showing that it can be done. Yes, there's cover-ups. Yes, there's, maybe not exposing myself to people seeing my nipples. But I think absolutely we need to be showing that actually it's normal to feed in public. I think in places there needs to be areas that are made for women to be able to breastfeed
like at a
publicly.
Mall, like maybe with some there's like
breastfeeding rooms.
Breastfeeding rooms.
Because currently I've seen a lot of women breastfeeding in bathrooms, in public bathrooms.
Imagine.
I mean, that's not okay.
It's not okay.
So I think if we are able to deal with it culturally from that perspective and publicize it. I mean, I'm hoping that eventually it becomes a very well accepted norm, a very well accepted way of feeding our babies, because I think it's a little bit hectic how much judgment and how much criticism women come under just for trying to feed their babies.
Yeah, that's so true. And I used to do it, and I guess more than anything, when you do it, the restaurant owner or the manager will like, you disturbing.
Yes,
like,
but it's food.
But everyone
We're
is
eating.
chewing.
But the baby can't eat.
But the baby can eat. But sorry, and then, like you're saying, it's also how you do it. It's not like you're gonna leave the boob hanging while the child is looking around. No, the nipple is covered and the baby wants to eat.
Exactly.
And I'm sure maybe if restaurants could also have like that room where mom can be excused and then you can go to not the toilet.
Yeah, no.
The feeding room, because when the child is hungry, they're hungry.
They're
Either
hungry.
that than a child who's crying.
Because you'll get stared at anyway,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, second last question. You spoke about the community, about how can people around a breastfeeding mom support her so that she can be calm and be able to, like your story is amazing. Like, I don't know how you did it, especially because I've heard women giving up on breastfeeding because of the stress of life. So what type of support, what advice would you give to the families to support the moms so that they can be able to, at least try?
Yeah. I mean, families and partners, that early stage can feel a little bit disempowering, particularly for partners, because fathers are usually very solution focused, like, what's the problem? Let's fix it, and breastfeeding is this very delicate time where mom and baby are both kind of learning each other and adapting to this new environment. So I think emotional support is very important from whoever, from parents, from partners, from siblings, from friends. Emotional support, So, I remember with me walking into the neonatal ICU on the first day, I pumped and coming with, I think it was 5 mils of colostrum, and the nurses were like, yay, well done.
You did it.
And they made you feel like such a champion. And it really, like, I went back to the ward because I was still admitted at the point, and I remember feeling like, yes, I can actually do this. And then the next day it was 10 mils, and the next day it was 20 mils, and it just gets better and better. But that positive reinforcement that comes from people saying, wow, look at you, you're doing so well, not minimizing your complaints. So when your nipples start to crack, when you're struggling with supply because you've had a particularly stressed out day, or you're not feeling well, or you've had to stop pumping for a little while because you've gone onto medication or antibiotics or whatever the case may be, just having the emotional support around you that says, listen, you can do it. How can I help you? You can do it. You're doing well. Being empathetic to what your challenges are, not just being like, I just breastfeed, and hearing you out. I think there's the physical support as well, which we kind of often forget about. And I always make a joke about, your friends at your baby shower that are like, show me when you need what,
Yes,
and then you forget about them when you're breastfeeding. But I'm like, call those friends, call them. They can help, especially friends that have had babies, family members that have had babies, help with position, help you try and figure out, have you tried this? Obviously not too much, because too much advice also comes with
a lot.
Own set of stresses, but like, if you have people around you that can actually provide physical support, even a cup of tea, bring me a cup of tea and a magazine while I breastfeed my baby, get me the stuff. I remember I had to pump, like I say, for a long time. Get me the stuff, let's help me sterilize, that in the middle of the night, yes, I'm waking up to pump, but at least I'm not walking downstairs, getting the pump and making sure everything is sterilized. So that practical support as well, where you're able to help, able to get the breast milk bags, little things like that make us feel like we're not alone in this journey of breastfeeding. Go a long way in just making it a little bit easier and the burden a little bit kind of lighter to carry.
When Dr. Sihle was here the last time, we spoke about the co-sleeping, and I was asking about, sometimes you would sleep with your child in the middle, if you have a partner in the middle. Is it fine to, let's say in the middle of the night, they're busy crying, and then you can just whip it up and give it to them in that position? Or should a mom get up in the middle of the night and feed them? Because now I was so lazy. I don't want to lie.
Oh, no, of
I would
course.
just like, try to find
the mouth. Absolutely. Absolutely. If anyone that has tried a nighttime feed,
it's not easy.
Be it by bottle or by breast, you're just like, yo, guys, there must be a way. Yeah. And absolutely, co-sleeping and feeding while you sleep, honestly, because your brain is relaxed because you're sleeping, your let-down reflex just functions better. Prolactin's on a high, oxytocin is on a high. And actually works really well for babies. Obviously, once they start teething, you run into the risk, obviously, of breast milk caries, you know, because some babies do then get rotten teeth because they're falling asleep with a nipple in the mouth. It's true, it happens, yeah.
Oh, really?
But in the beginning, 100%, it is the best thing for your milk supply. It is the best thing for feeding on demand and for your baby. And the both of you will get good long sleep, and you whip it out. You sleep on your side, and baby can feed. And it helps a lot with mastitis and engorgement and all those challenges that come with not being able to feed regularly.
And when you are warm, because you're, like you're saying, you are so relaxed.
You're so relaxed.
And you like the baby is just literally next to you. What advice would you give to moms who are struggling, and advice that you would give to moms who are doing it and they must just keep on doing it and doing it?
Yeah. So to moms who are not struggling, well done. You are superheroes. And you will feel the benefits, not just for your baby, but for yourself, of breastfeeding for many, 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 many years to come. So keep at it, you know, keep at it. I always, we're fortunate to be in this age where women actually want to breastfeed, you know.
Yeah, they do.
I always make the joke that I thought I'd breastfeed till my kids were like 3, and I'd be sitting with my friends and they'd be calling it by mouth, asking for the breast. But they decided when they were done, and then I had to be done, you know. So I really always think, like, well done to those mums that are doing it, because it really is, it is a labor of love, and it's not always super easy, and we know it comes with a set of challenges. For the women that are struggling, like I say, be kind to yourself.
Absolutely.
Number one, it is a steep learning curve, not just for you, but for your baby as well. So adjust your expectations. Forget about what people told you before this, you know. I think, like I was saying, you almost have to prepare yourself for, like, you're going into a battle that's going to last a couple of months, you know, and do the things, read up around it, ask for help. Ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help around breastfeeding, because it is difficult, you know. Ask for help, equip yourself, and if you really can't, and you've tried, even a teaspoon of breast milk is going to benefit your baby, you know. So even if you're giving a little bit of breast milk and the rest is breast milk alternatives like formula, like we say, fed is best, but be kind to yourself, because it's a long journey.
It is.
It's long, from the time they're born to the time they're 18, often later, when, you know, when they kind of it's a long journey.
It is.
So you want to treat yourself with as much love and empathy and kindness for this journey as you can. And we're all doing the best that we can.
Absolutely. And the duration, because you would hear people used to judge me a lot when Nema was 2 and she could speak and ask for it. And then some people will be like, no, 6 months is enough, or should we just wait and see? Because I feel like if it wasn't for work, I was gonna breastfeed until. So is there such a thing where it's wrong to breastfeed for like until the child is 3, or you can go as long as you can? There's nothing wrong. And like, let's talk about the duration.
Okay, so if we think about like how we were made, like how God made things to be, right? The milk teeth, remember the milk teeth?
Yes.
They fall out when your child's, 6, 7?
Yes.
So apparently those teeth were the teeth that were made that your child could still breastfeed with milk teeth. So from a history long way back when, babies would breastfeed up to the age of 6, 7 when the milk teeth fell out.
Wow.
Actually, right?
Wow.
Obviously, there's an age, kind of 3 months for iron, around 6 months for food, where the breast milk composition is just not enough to meet the caloric requirements of your baby. So even though it's meeting immune system and all of that, it's not meeting calorie requirements. So because of that, we know around 6 months we need supplemental feeding. You know, we need other food sources. But in terms of duration of breastfeeding, over and above everything else, it's a decision that only you and your baby can make.
Got you.
That's what I'm going to say. It's you and your baby that decide.
Okay. And then how, like you're saying, some kids decide very early, but when you still want to go on and continue. Yeah. And then it does affect you, like, because some people really enjoy breastfeeding. And when your baby has decided, nah, I'm done, they're done. And there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Absolutely nothing. I always make this like observation that after the age of 1, if a baby is feeding beyond 1, it's more about the mother, or maybe it's also about the mother than about the child. So it's one of those. Like, I think often, like, for me, basically, my kids would be pulling at my nipple and watching TV. And I was like, actually, you guys don't want this anymore. Yes. And it is hard. It is a tough, like, oh, okay, are you done already? Oh, okay. But I mean, they decide. Ultimately, they decide, and we can't force them, right?
And then those women who are worried about their boobs sagging.
Okay, so, those are, a lot of people say breast milk, breastfeeding will impact how quickly your breasts sag, but there's a lot of women who are able to bounce back. I think from an elasticity point of view, there are going to be some changes, but those changes are related to hormones, they're related to age as well. So yes, but I for me personally think that the benefits of breastfeeding
are more important than Matswela willing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, these days, you will go to plastic surgery thing, if you worry, there's so many options these days where women are like, okay, cool, I will breastfeed until, and then if I want to fix them, you fix them.
There are options.
And I think you're right, we forget how also genes and everything, because sometimes I would look at you and be like, but your boobs are still standing. Why am I? There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, because we're different and our bodies are different.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think that's where the being kind to yourself also is part of that don't worry too much about how the boobs are going to look. What's more important is your health, your baby, and everything else what I want to after.
Yeah.
All right. No, I'm happy. That's it. Thank you so much, Doctor. I really learned a lot, and I don't know if I'm going to have another baby one day, but if I do, I will definitely breastfeed again.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Breast is best, 100%.
Breast is best. Thank you. Thank you so much.